Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, or should I say Saturday's Warriors, because today I've got my buddy Adam with me, and we are going to be looking at week 2. We're going to be doing our picks, rolling through the Big 12 and some of the other major games of the weekend. And because we're still out of conference, that's a lot of games to roll through. So we're not going to hit all the major games, but some of the biggest ones of the weekend. And so before we get into it, though, please be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So now let's start off with obviously BYU. So this last weekend, we watched BYU give a very lackluster performance, to say the least. I felt, and I said, at least I think I said in my recap video, I recorded at 2 a.m. after the game. And I don't know how coherent I was in my video, but I think my thoughts were, I saw some issues, but they all looked like coachable type issues, effort things, and in terms of seeing wide receivers not really blocking, or other things that just felt like people were out of position, and it felt like the O-line didn't hold up in certain situations. And I don't know if those are miscues, or if it's people not understanding play or effort or what it was, but it all looked like it was coachable. And so I was thinking, this is week 1. Let's not overreact. Let's not panic and freak out. Having said that, I am still concerned, and I'm looking forward to this next week to see some corrections and to see BYU really right the ship and come out the way we expected them to. Obviously, the defense was a very pleasant surprise, but it is concerning, especially in the Big 12, where there's a lot of high-flying offenses, when our offense is supposed to be our strength, and you come out and you can only get 14 on Sam Houston. So, Adam, what do you want to see out of BYU this week to start making you feel a little more comfortable?
Yeah, well, and before I get too far into that, Trevor, let me say first, I'm super excited to be here. You are one of the most knowledgeable football fans I know, so I was stoked when you told me about this channel and the idea you had, and I think it's great. So it's fun to be on here talking shop with you. Um, yeah, I mean that's not what you want to see on an opener from your offense, and your defense exceeds expectations. And so preseason, we're thinking offense is going to be flying high, and defense is going to be mediocre's a good year, right, for the defense. And all of a sudden, our expectations are swapped immediately after game 1. I'm the same way. I'm not hitting the panic button. You're concerned, obviously, and I think you'll know halfway through the game this Saturday at halftime. I think you'll know what kind of team we have, because they're motivated to come out. There's a lot they need to correct. It just looked discombobulated for whatever reason. To me, this is either a game 1 hiccup and they're going to put it together, and I think they will. A-Rod's a great coordinator. Or we're seeing that A-Rod's offense is pretty complicated. You got a ton of new guys on the team, and it's going to take a little while to gel, and that spells trouble because we got a lot of big games coming. And so that's what I'm looking for this Saturday from the offense, one or the other. I think the defense is going to be great. I do worry that it's going to be a pattern that we've seen in the past, where the first few games we're a pretty stout defense, and then when the injuries pile up, we don't have the depth to keep up. So that does concern me about the defense, but man, was that fun to watch. Jay Hill's a great coordinator. It's just aggressive, everything they promised in the preseason, they actually delivered on, which was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, so I want to make a couple points on that, but the talking about the defense, first of all, it showed that we had the talent, that it existed, that we should have been better the last couple of years. I mean, you look at, Jacob Robinson, he was here last year. We saw Bywater, and even Thule, and others making those tackles and in the
Yeah,
mix. So we had the talent there, just they weren't in position. So it shows, like you
yeah,
said, well coached, the scheme's working so far. We'll see if the
yeah,
depth, to your point, is there throughout
yeah,
this season. But yeah, the offense, some of the things I've heard is, we didn't have our 2 top receivers, which is true, but that did not seem to be the issue. I mean, we couldn't really get the run game going either,
yeah,
until they put in Martin. And so I think that's kind of a lame excuse, because we know that there's depth in that receiving core, and that was one of the things they touted. They said, this is, yeah, we don't have Puka, we don't have Gunner, but we've got depth. And so I don't think that's a great excuse. And also with our O line, also, we have some behemoths up there, and to not be able to create those running holes, or that our running backs can't hit them for whatever reason, that to me is concerning. But like you said, it's game one, so there's a lot of new pieces. But we also saw Colorado, who we'll get to, with even more new
Yeah,
players. And they came in
that's
on
a
that,
great point.
and they were able to put it together. So I don't know if that's just because their scheme is different, or maybe um, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it was more talent. Maybe it was just the matchup. I don't know. But they showed that it can be done. So I also don't know if that excuse is going to hold up, for too long. It seems like, okay, you get one game grace period, but now this week we really need to see you fix that.
Yeah, yeah, and the schedule won't really give them much of a grace period, right? You got SUU. You hope you come away with a win from an FCS opponent. Obviously heavily favored in this one, and I really think you'll see them show out. But man, you're going to Arkansas, you're going to Kansas, you got Cincy at home. There's no time to figure it out and gel. You got these two games against smaller schools. I'm not going to call them easier opponents necessarily, but they're smaller schools and typically smaller athletes, and those are the games where you want to take time to gel. And they could come out and they could hang 50 on SUU, and we walk away saying, oh boy, that game one was a fluke. And hopefully that's the case. But I won't be worried until halftime, third, fourth quarter in SUU, and if we've got another 14 on the scoreboard, color me concerned.
Is there any one area that you need to see the most progression in?
Oh, it's got to be the run game. It does. And I know our wide receivers couldn't get open, and that's a concern because they are supposed to be deep and they're supposed to be good. But man, we got Aiden Robbins. The guy's 240 pounds. You got a massive offensive line. Like, just slam the rock over and over again. And we started that way, right? The chunk yards was 6, 7 yards a carry. For whatever reason, we just couldn't get back in that rhythm. And I don't know the X's and O's well enough to say exactly why. Trevor Maddich had some interesting comments on BYU Sports Nation this week, where he just said there was no tenacity. The guys would block the man in front of them, and you put him on the ground, and then there's no effort to get to the second level and pancake the next guy. He's like, where is the tenacity? He went off on the O-line and just said there has got to be an edge to that you're not only blowing past the guy in front of you, knocking him to the ground, but you're on the second level taking out the linebackers, and that just didn't happen. And so I take it from Trevor Maddich, who knows infinitely more than I do about the game. I think it's that run game that's got to be there. Slovis is a proven passer. He missed a few. He'll get there. Our receivers are good. I'm not too concerned about that yet, but we got to establish a run game. It's an old adage, but it was concerning that we couldn't do that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And just to touch upon SUU specifically, I don't think we need to get too in depth. I mean, it is a quality team. They took ASU down to the wire, but that was also kind of a weird game. And also, I don't have a lot of confidence in ASU either, so I don't know how telling that is, but I do think that they're a competent team. The interesting tidbit I learned this week is that they run the same scheme as BYU, that they had grad assistants go down there and coach, and that system is in place. And so they know our calls. I imagine, the coaching staff and players were pretty coy on it, but I imagine they've changed up some of the signals and the calls.
Yeah, and not good coming from a week where we had trouble getting our normal calls down, and now we got to switch them up against SUU. And so that is a concern. They're similar to Sam Houston, in which they're defensive minded. They have a struggling offense. I think they had a block punt return for a TD against ASU to make up some of that ground, and ASU had some mental errors. So I agree. I don't really know what to expect. I think they're similar in makeup to Sam Houston, where they've got a decent defense, and which is another reason why our offense really needs to show out this week. I would expect another strong showing from our defense, because I just don't think SU has much of an offense at all.
Yeah, and I did see that their defense, while they are, like you said, defensive minded, but that their secondary is where they struggle a little bit, and they're a little bit thinner. So maybe that's a chance for our receivers to come out and kind of get going a little bit. And
yeah, I think Slovis is anxious. Let's get him 300 yards passing with a few TDs, and everybody will feel better about the offense.
Yeah, how do you feel about Slovis? Because where I'm at is, I feel confident. There's a lot of people that are out on him, and obviously, as BYU fans, I think generally have accepted him really well. He seemed to fit right in, and I have hope that in the right system, he can still repeat some of the success he's had in the past. But he was kind of all over the place. He had some amazing throws, but he also had some real wild passes, and he threw it away a lot. So,
Yeah.
uh, how are you feeling about him at this point?
I'm not concerned. It's the same thing with the offense. Just first game, you can have a bad game, and it's bad that it's the first game because now everybody's like, oh my goodness, can they really do it? I'm not concerned about Slovis yet. He's proven. I think he's in the right system. Roderick has proved he's really quarterback friendly. He's done this with a couple stellar guys in Wilson and Hall, and so I'm not concerned about it yet. I still think the matchup makes sense to have Slovis here and that he's going to do well. Um, but boy, we could be off on that. I mean, it may be that the scheme is just not gelling together, and he can't do it. So again, if we can't put it together in the SUU game, then I start to get a little concerned. Right now, no concerns whatsoever. It was game one. We flopped. It doesn't feel good, right? It's uncomfortable, but I'm not jumping off the Slovis bandwagon. I think he's great. I think he's going to be a great NFL QB, and he's got to get his sea legs under him, and I think we'll do it.
Yeah, and something that makes me feel confident is that A-Rod wanted this guy, and that John Beck vouched for him too. Like John
Yeah,
Beck trying to get him to
yeah,
BYU, and so that makes me feel more confident too. So yeah, I think we'll get there. So I guess to sum up, we're not panicking, but we definitely want to see some progress this week.
yeah,
We want to see
yeah,
BYU get their ducks in a row and really see that offense going this
yeah.
week.
It was uncomfortable, but no panic button yet.
Yeah, I agree. Week one, let's not freak out, and also I think Sam Houston is probably a better opponent than perhaps some people are giving him. Considering they're new to the FBS. But
Yeah.
okay, so let's move on to the Big 12 now, and we'll just kind of go in order of when the games are aired. So Friday night we've got the Kansas Illinois matchup. I mean, this sounds like a great basketball game. How's it going to be in football?
Um, the way Kansas goes is determined by Jalen Daniels. They played Missouri State last week, and that was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. Um, and I know the end score didn't look that close, but it was a much closer game than you want to see as a Jayhawk fan. But I did see a report that Jalen Daniels is going to play, so I'm taking the Jayhawks in this one for that single factor because I think as Jalen Daniel goes, so goes the team. If he's out, I'd take Illinois in a heartbeat, but I'll pick Kansas if since they've got Jalen back.
Yeah, I'm going with Kansas. So I made predictions for this season, and so I don't know if I'm going to really change. I don't think week one was enough for me to flip on any of my preseason picks for game or for week two at this point. Illinois, I did dig into them a little bit more for this than I did for my initial picks, and they're slated to be kind of middle of the Big Ten, which the Big Ten has a pretty steep drop off. So I don't know how much that means, but
Yeah,
uh, they are supposed to be pretty good defensively. And so it's going to be a really interesting matchup because, Kansas's strength on offense is going to be up against the Illini's strength in defense. And so it should be good and to see, whose strength is going to be able to overcome. And like you said, I think Jalen Daniels, if he's healthy, he's not just rushed back, it's back issue. So it's always hard to say,
yeah.
uh, if that's gonna be flaring up or not. But let's assume that he's healthy and he's able to play to at least close to full capacity. I think that they can do it. But I think it's interesting that they're not even favored in this matchup, and
I
it's at
know.
Kansas.
Yeah, that surprised me too. I think their defense played poorly. Again, they only give up 17 points, but it was 24 to 17 with time left in the fourth quarter. That doesn't bode well for that team this year. Now that was without Jalen Daniels, but they've got to show out. So we'll see. But with Jalen Daniels back, I like him at least against the Fighting Illini. Um, I don't want him to be too good because the Cougars need that game. If we're going to be bowl eligible, we got to beat Kansas. So yeah, we'll see. I'm really interested in this because I love those games that tell you when that tell you really what this trajectory for the team is going to be, and I feel like this is it for Kansas. They got their quarterback back. They're playing a real opponent. Now we know who Kansas is. So I'm excited about this game.
Yeah, and one last thing on this is the their Illinois' defense, which is supposed to be its strength, allowed more yards than they were able to put up. Even though they won, it was a close game, and their defense still let up more yards than their offense could score.
Yeah,
So I think that sounds promising. That's a good stat, I think, for the Jayhawks.
yeah, true.
And so now going to another game, and which was since BYU is not playing Utah this year, it felt like with the kind of brotherhood that's emerging between Baylor and BYU, this felt like the de facto holy war for this year. Now that after week one, I don't know if we want to claim that anymore going into this game.
Yeah, yeah. I was the same way, and I'll tell you, week two are the most difficult picks to make. And you brought us on week two because you don't know. All the football savants will tell you the biggest change you see in a team is between week one and week two, and that's certainly hopeful for Baylor, right? I had this one pegged the same way. I thought, oh, Utah's going to visit Baylor. They're going to introduce them to Big 12 football. Man, this is going to be awesome. And watching Baylor get stomped by Texas State at home last week. Uh, Whether or not Cam Rising plays in this is a non-factor, and I just don't think Baylor has what it takes. Unfortunately, unless again it was a crazy week one where they laid an egg, but man, Blake Shapen's out with an injury now. It doesn't look good for the Bears. I like Utah in this one.
I liked Utah in this one before week one. And so now after watching that, I do think they'll come back and they'll get things in order. I think it was hopefully a wake up call for them, much like we're talking about with BYU and some of these other teams. But Utah, I also don't want to overreact to Utah's week one because I think we learned more about Florida in that game than we learned about
Oh,
Utah.
I completely agree. I completely agree. We don't know who Utah is yet. I think traditionally they'll have a super strong defense. Cam Rising's a legit quarterback. They could be a good team, but I agree that week one, I feel like we don't know anything about Utah. It was all about how bad Florida was in that game. They were, speaking of a discombobulated offense, they could not figure it out. So yeah, we'll see who Utah is, but I don't know if this game's going to test them very much. We'll see.
Yeah, like I said, yeah, we don't know who they are, but I think we can be confident that they're definitely going to be better than Texas Tech or Texas State. And their defense and is their strength. They're going up against Baylor's backup quarterback, and I just don't know if one week they're going to be able to flip it that drastically. But
Yeah,
in their
yeah.
their O line, I mean Grimes, I mean that was something that he did when he was at BYU has helped us. I mean that's where he coached, before he was offensive coordinator, and that was his strength. They picked up the Barrington brothers, and their O line was just terrible. So
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
knows?
Uncharacteristic.
So maybe that is something that if they clean it up a little bit, it'll help them. But
Yeah.
I'm not hopeful. So I'm definitely. I think Utah is the safe pick in this, and I think I look at the betting odds. They only have Utah by a touchdown, which I think is
Wow.
generous.
Yeah. That's surprising.
This one, I think, is safe to say Kansas State should come out rolling.
Yeah. Kansas State's a strong team this year. I think that's an easy pick. You'd hope.
Okay, let's move on. We'll have plenty to say about them as the season goes on.
Yeah.
Okay, here's an interesting one. If you don't like watching people score in football.
This is really actually a very sad scenario with the betting scandal at both schools. Um, I just it's really really disappointing to see that and tough for both of these schools. I've got Iowa in this one because Iowa State I think is hit worse by that betting scandal, losing their quarterback and just more distractions from it than anything else. And that's the only reason I've got Iowa winning this. I think they're equally matched teams. It would have been really fun to see them both at full strength, but I think Iowa pulls out the mild upset here.
Yeah, I see Iowa State, and I really think this season they could surprise some people. If the team rallies together, and this could be one of those one of these instances where you see the teams kind of have to go through what's the word I'm looking for?
Adversity.
Adversity, and really pull together and overcome and surprise everybody. However,
Yeah.
I don't think that this is going to be the game where they do that. I think they'll have some games where they're able to come out and possibly win some games that they shouldn't. I just think their offense may not have enough to overcome this defense. And then again, I don't know if Iowa has enough to overcome their own offense. So
No
it could be.
points. 3-0 Iowa.
There you go. Okay. Okay, Oklahoma. What do you make of this?
Yeah. Yeah. Not much of a game there for because I think I get SMU is Power 5 now, right? They're in the position we were in a while back, and but man, Oklahoma, I had picked them to be middle of the Big 12 this year. I really didn't think that they would bounce back from last year. I thought their offense would continue to struggle, their defense would be good. But then they walk out and put 73 in the opener, and I I'm becoming a believer. So this will be a good test, somewhat, to see if they can sustain that kind of offensive success. I think they will, and I think Oklahoma wins this one pretty handily. They were pretty impressive in week one.
So my week one was, or my preseason read on Oklahoma was the exact same as yours, and you know, you don't. Week one, you don't want to overreact. We keep saying that, and it was just Arkansas State. Not that they're a terrible team, but uh, but laying 73-0 on any team tells us something. So there is
Yeah.
some level of competence there. I mean, if we go back to looking at BYU, it was only 14-0.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think we did learn that there is more to the Sooners than perhaps I gave them credit for prior to the season. The other thing they have going for them is their schedule. It's really lined up nicely for them to have a lot of success. So even if they are only 8-win type team in terms of their skill and the talent and that they have on their team, I bet they could exceed that just because of the way the teams that they have on their schedule and don't have on their schedule. So I think this is
Yeah.
definitely a good start for them. SMU is no slouch necessarily, but yeah, I don't think the Sooners should have an issue um, in this game.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, West Virginia versus D- how do you say
Duquesne.
this? Duquesne.
Duquesne.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Yes. I think we can hope the best for the Mountaineers in this one. They need this one. They they got thumped by Penn State. They're not projected to be that great this year. They need the Duquesne win. So let's hope for the best for them.
Yeah, and I think this one shouldn't be an issue, but I think they're a team that could surprise us. They could come together and rally as well, and we'll see what they're able to do through the rest of the season. But it all hinges on them definitely getting this win at the very least. This is an interesting matchup this week: Cincy versus Pitt.
Yeah, it really is. And this is another one of those games that I love early in the season because you get to know who Cincinnati really is. Um, I was shocked. I thought Luke Fickell was the heart and soul of this team and that they would be a sub 500 team this year. And that may still be the case, but boy, they again look good in week one, dropping 66 on their opponent. Their defense was supposed to be stout and their offense mediocre. And you just never know. That could still be the case, but they looked really good in week one. And now we'll find out. If they come out and they put a thump on Pitt, then Cincinnati's sticking around this year and they're going to be forced to be reckoned with.
Yeah, makes me feel a little less good about our Big 12 home opener against
Hmm.
Cincinnati, but because BYU definitely needs that one to make it to bowl eligibility. So
Yeah.
we'll see. That should be a very intriguing game to watch.
Yeah.
All right, here's the one that ESPN won't let us forget about: Alabama and
Yeah, I had this one circled a while back because as a huge college football fan, I don't really dislike any specific team, right? I might feel a certain way about the Utes, especially when we're playing them, but I don't like to dislike teams. It's just fun to watch them all. But man, I am so tired of Alabama. So tired of Alabama. And it was so much fun last year that they lost a whole two games and that people could score a million points on their defense. And so my hope is that that was a harbinger that Saban's lost a step. The coordinators he brought in, I don't think are elite level like they've been in the past. And so I'm picking Texas in this. I really hope they get the upset, and I just hope we see a changing of the guard. That it's not Alabama every year anymore. They'll always be good with Saban, but I just hope that they're not just crushing everyone else like they have for more than a decade.
yeah, I know that Alabama has some question marks too that they're still trying to figure out that, this might not be the same Alabama team as some of the previous years we've seen. But I went back and looked because Alabama at the beginning of the year, they'll often open with a big game against another Power Five opponent. And it's
Hmm.
either the first week, sometimes it's the second week, having played a more cupcake game the first week. And you know how often they lose those since 2010?
I don't know.
None. They haven't lost any of them.
Uh,
So
I
I feel
believe
like
it.
when Nick Saban has time to prep and go after a team and really focus on them, because you think about it, when he loses, it feels like usually during the season, it's those trap games. He maybe has
Yeah.
a big
Yeah.
match against somebody else, and then it's those other, it'll be a Ole Miss or somebody who, a week after playing another tough opponent that'll kind of sneak in there and surprise them. And so the other types of games, and I don't have a stat on this, but that Nick Saban is really good at are those revenge games. And I know
Yep.
Alabama won, but everyone was talking about how Texas almost won or should have won. It
Yes.
came down to some calls, and
Yes.
so I almost, and it's one of his coordinators that has gone off. So I just think he has a lot of motivation and a lot of
Yeah.
reasons to not sleep on this game, and it's in Tuscaloosa that I just can't see Bama losing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tough one for sure. It's a stretch to call Texas there, and you see by the FPI they don't like them either. I hope they can pull it off. I'll be watching, but we'll see. We'll see. It's a tough one for
Well, I'm glad we disagreed on one finally. So,
them.
all right. So
uh,
now we've got,
Oregon, Texas. Oh, go ahead.
oh, no, yeah, Oregon, Texas Tech.
Oh, or I was just going to say, poor Texas Tech. First Wyoming, now Oregon. Not a good start to the season for them. I pick Oregon in this one.
Yeah. So Texas Tech, I don't know if their defense is going to be able to slow down Oregon much, which means they're going to have to outgun Oregon. And, as much as I like to think, they're at home and they could give Big 12 a good showing against the Pac 12, I just don't think that it's going to happen. So I think
Yeah,
it's too much for them, which is too bad because I still think they can make some noise in the Big 12 this year. Obviously,
yeah.
these two first games not being in conference. So we'll see. All right. UCF and Boise State.
I'm excited about this one. Um, it, I have UCF in this one because Boise State looked so bad against Washington. I thought they'd show out a little bit better than that. My theory has been you can only get so many coaching tree generations away from Chris Peterson before Boise State starts to crack, and I feel like they're at that point now where it's tough to keep up that sort of success long term. It's so impressive what they've done, but I just think they're tapering off and they're catching UCF at a bad time because UCF's on up and coming. This is on the Smurf turf, so you got to give a little nod to Boise for that, but I see UCF in this one.
Yeah, you're completely right. And it's interesting because I feel like these two, on Twitter and things, these two fan bases have formed somewhat of a rivalry. They played maybe just once, at least more recently, but they're similar in fact that they're both kind of newer, but they've had a lot of success at the FBS level.
Yeah,
And Boise State has always felt like that next team up and somehow continues to get overlooked as teams get the call up to the Power Five levels, and they've somehow gotten left behind. And so I'd like, for Boise State, even though I should be rooting for Big 12 teams, UCF's not on our schedule this year. So I'd like to see Boise State, come out and show, that they can still compete, but I think UCF's going to be too much. I mean, UCF is almost a dark horse in the Big 12. So,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I
They can
just
make some noise there.
yeah, so I just don't think, and not only do I think UCF is going to win, I'm not even completely convinced on how close the game is going to be.
Agreed.
So
Yeah,
it's too bad to see the fall because I still think back to that Fiesta Bowl as one of my favorite games all time.
it
So
was. Yep. Um, Houston versus Rice. This is going to be interesting. I don't think Houston's a great team. They almost lost to a good UTSA team last week, but pulled it out just barely. And I think Rice is a decent team. They got the journeyman JT Daniels at quarterback. I like Rice in the upset.
I love it. I think it's totally possible. Like I said, I don't really want to flip on any of my picks just yet. I think Houston can pull it out, but I also had Houston losing to UTSA. So I wonder if now they pull out this win and they're feeling good about themselves, and maybe they let Rice go under the radar. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I still think Houston could pull out another close one. Plus, we need to disagree more. So, all right.
Poor Nichols. That's all we need to say about TCU versus Nichols. The TCU's got the biggest chip on their shoulder in college football right now, and they're gonna unleash a lot of emotion on Nichols. So poor Nichols.
Oklahoma State, Arizona State. So this one is interesting because these are two teams that I don't really have a lot of confidence in and gave us pretty underwhelming week one showing. So what do you make of it?
I take Oklahoma State in this because Jaden Rashada is young for Arizona State, and so that's really the difference maker to me. He's a great quarterback. You could tell against SUU. They barely pulled it out against SUU, but they had that weird rain delay. They were up 21-0 in the first half. ASU looked good. I think they're a good team. Oklahoma State's just a little bit more experienced. They've got a more experienced head coach. So I like Oklahoma State in this. But more so because of the inexperience at quarterback for Arizona State. I think they're a good team, but I expect to see the Cowboys win on the road.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in them, but I do think that they definitely have more than ASU and are going to be able to put enough together to seal the deal on this one. So that wraps up our Big 12 picks. I want to hit a few other. Here's an old school Big 12 matchup with Nebraska and Colorado.
Well, I love one of the things I love about college football is the innovation and Colorado ran a cutting edge offense. It was so creative and so much fun to watch. Not too complex, but just really good athletes having a lot of fun out there. To me, that's must see TV. Colorado wins this one. They're going to continue the momentum. I don't think they're going undefeated. I don't think they're winning the Pac-12. But I do think they're going to carry a lot of momentum on early in the season, and I just Nebraska's in a totally different phase of a rebuild than Colorado, and they're going to struggle.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm going with Nebraska on this, although I don't feel great about it, especially now that I've seen Colorado in action. But they're two very different styles of play, and Nebraska is more of your old school kind of smash mouth. Definitely will fit in the Big Ten with Matt Rule coaching. He brings that style that's going to work there. But Colorado, they show that they can dice up a defense with passing. I mean, they barely rushed at all in that win over TCU. So it will be interesting. I thought that Colorado, when they brought in all these guys from the transfer portal, and with the attitude and the confidence that Coach Prime has, that I thought it was going to be a bunch of showboats. It was going to be a lot of talent, but they weren't going to be able to pull it together. But they showed that they're not only talented but disciplined, and that they can execute their game plan. And so I do think Colorado is going, they've already shown that they're better than people gave them credit for, that they thought they would be this year. I also don't think they'll compete necessarily in the Pac-12, but they'll definitely go out there and give a lot of teams some headaches in these matchups. So I think it's going to be a tough one. I think Nebraska's going to have a tougher defense, but you're right in terms of talent. They're in a more typical year one of a rebuild versus Colorado. So it's definitely going to be a fun game. I don't know if it'll be as high scoring as TCU, but should be a fun matchup. All right. So quickly, I don't know how familiar you are with Ole Miss and Tulane here, but what's your read on this?
I like Lane Kiffin. I like that he has like 9 starting caliber quarterbacks in his quarterback room. I mean, he just stocked that room this year. But I think he's a great offensive mind. It's been really fun to see what he does with Ole Miss. I like him against Tulane. It's nice to see Tulane in the top 25. I'd love to see him go in there and get an upset. It'd be that kind of stuff is fun for college football. But I think Ole Miss is too good right now. They're in a good spot with their program.
Yeah, it is a top 25 matchup. I love Tulane. I think they got some of the best uniforms in all of college football.
We'd have to debate those uniforms another time. I can't stand the green wave with the blue, but We'll get to aesthetics another time.
Well, I also like Ole Miss look. So, but yeah, I just I want to root for them. But I love what they did last year. I love that game against USC. I just don't know if they're going to be able to repeat that with Ole Miss this weekend, unfortunately. And that was it. This is just FPI. So
Yeah.
that's it for our the matchups we're looking at for this week. So I just want to say, Adam, thank you for coming on. This is I should have said this at the top of the segment, but this is a segment we're going to try to get out each week. Looking forward to the next week, all season long. And Adam, you said nice things about me at the top of the video, but really, I wanted you to come on because I felt like you're someone out there that could, add a lot more to than what I had to say about these teams. So I appreciate it. We're just going to have to start disagreeing a little bit more on some of these matchups, and perhaps we will as we get into the season. But yeah, thanks so much for hopping on, and please be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.